Critics may be hoping for a last-minute breakthrough, but so far, this story does not appear to have a Hollywood ending.
Now, America's film and TV industry is expected to grind to a halt today as tens of thousands of Hollywood actors join screenwriters in the first industry-wide strike in more than 60 years.
Hollywood studios remain in the dark as the strike from the Writers Guild of America reached its 100th day.
So, yeah. Hollywood is kind of on fire right now. Let me explain. While writers and actors are currently on strike fighting to get their basic needs met, Hollywood studio execs have reportedly made almost $500 million in the last 5 years. Knowing this, I think it's pretty safe to say that there's something wrong with how the film industry treats its creatives. This becomes even more clear when you look into the sneaky ways these massive studios handle their finances to quote-unquote lose money. Like, they're literally making hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet there never seems to be enough money to go around. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're new here, which at our current count of 124 subscribers, you probably are. Hi, I'm Jaleo1 and welcome to The Stopish. My partner and I make videos related to business, money, and power, and this is how Hollywood movies lose money after making billions. What if I told you that Harry Potter, the insanely popular story about a wizard boy doing wizard things, wasn't profitable? Sounds pretty crazy, right? Well, according to Warner Brothers, that's exactly what happened with Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. You see, even though the fifth film in the Harry Potter franchise made nearly $1 billion at the box office, the studio somehow managed to take a loss of almost $170 million, at least on paper anyway. Here's another one. In the early 2000s, a small romantic comedy movie called My Big Fat Greek Wedding completely dominated the box office, generating well over $300 million throughout its entire run. What's even more impressive is that this movie was made on a budget of about $5 million, which means, if my math is correct, this movie made a wild 6,000% return on investment. However, despite this massive success, on paper, the film lost $20 million. So how exactly is this possible? And if most studios are losing money, why do they still keep making these movies? Well, in Hollywood, there's this thing called Hollywood accounting, and it's defined as the opaque or creative accounting methods used by the film, video, television, and music industry to budget and record profits for creative projects. So in other words, this type of accounting allows studios to manipulate their finances in really sketchy ways that's completely legal by the government. Here's a super simplified example. Let's say there's a studio called Mike's Super Cool Studio, and they decide to make a film called Steve's Super Cool Movie. Well, the first thing they want to do is register Steve's Super Cool Movie as a new company which they own. Afterwards, they then have Mike's Super Cool Studio charge Steve's Super Cool Movie various service and distribution fees, which would then be taken out of Steve's Super Cool Movie's box office. So for instance, if Steve's Super Cool Movie costs $10 to make and they owe Mike's Super Cool Studio $30 due to incredibly high distribution fees and interest rates, the movie needs to make $40 to break even and $41 to be considered profitable. Now let's say that Steve's Super Cool Movie only made $39 at the box office. The movie can now claim a loss of $1 because they were unable to fully pay back the fees owed to Mike's Super Cool Studio. But here comes the shady part. Remember, Mike's Super Cool Studio and Steve's Super Cool Movie are both owned by the same person. So why on earth would Mike's Super Cool Studio intentionally charge Steve's Super Cool Movie high distribution fees and interest rates that would be difficult to pay back? Well, the answer is simple. In Hollywood accounting, expenditures can be inflated to reduce or eliminate the reported profit of the project, thereby reducing the amount which the corporation must pay in taxes, royalties, and other profit sharing agreements, as these are based on net profit. Basically, with this method of accounting, studios can report various losses in order to gain tax breaks and save themselves some money, which in a weird way could sound like a good thing. Like, the more money a studio can save, the more money that could go back into new and better projects. In reality though, this practice is often used to give CEOs and shareholders more money for their mega yachts and mansions, while also screwing over creative talents like actors, writers, and directors by making it hard for them to receive the money they actually worked hard for.
Oh my god, I'm about to be so rich. And you got time. What? We did not get paid very well. Ever. And when I say did not get paid very well, you would die. People were bartenders still. People had their second job still. They were famous as like internationally famous. Couldn't go outside but had to keep their second jobs because they couldn't afford to not. We couldn't afford cabs to set, you guys.
Did you know that in Hollywood, contracts with conditions such as royalties from net profits are sometimes called monkey points? Interestingly, the term monkey points was coined in the late 80s by actor and comedian Eddie Murphy. In a deposition he gave to Art Bushell's lawyer for their lawsuit against Paramount Pictures, Eddie Murphy famously referred to net profit percentages as monkey points because they were essentially worthless. And for the most part, he's right. According to the studios, almost 80% of movies in Hollywood are not profitable on paper. Now here's where things get a bit devious. If 80% of movies in Hollywood are truly not profitable, this would suggest that time and time again, studios make these horrifically bad fake contracts to con unsuspecting talent out of their rightfully deserved earnings. One example of this involves David Prowse, the actor who played Darth Vader in the original Star Wars trilogy. And by actor, I mean David Prowse played the physical form of Darth Vader. However, he wasn't responsible for the iconic voice we're all familiar with today. That was James Earl Jones. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, moving on. In an interview with Equity magazine, David Prowse went on to say that he would receive letters from Lucasfilm that claimed that Return of the Jedi, one of the biggest film releases of his time, making well over $500 million in the box office, wasn't profitable. I get these occasional letters from Lucasfilm saying that we regret to inform you that as Return of the Jedi has never gone to profit, we've got nothing to send you. I don't want to look like I'm bitching about it, but on the other hand, if there's a pot of gold somewhere that I ought to be having a share of, I would like to see it. Sadly, David Prowse passed away in 2020 at the age of 85, having never received residuals from his performance. But it turns out he wasn't alone. Many others were also affected by the unfair practices of Hollywood accounting. For example, after making nearly $1 billion in the box office, New Line Cinema, the company behind the beloved Lord of the Rings trilogy, claimed that the franchise saw horrendous losses and wasn't profitable at all. This of course resulted in multiple lawsuits against the studio. One of the big names behind these lawsuits was the trilogy's very own director, Peter Jackson. He said that New Line committed fraud in his handling of the revenues generated by the Fellowship of the Ring, and as a result, he was underpaid by millions. His lawyers also went on to say that, after New Line applied his contract interpretation from Fellowship to the other two movies, Mr. Jackson was underpaid by as much as $100 million for the trilogy. Now this is where it gets interesting. At the start of these lawsuits, it seemed that New Line Cinema was getting ready for a long and drawn out legal process. A spokesman for New Line said, "We don't agree with the plaintiff's claims, and we will defend ourselves vigorously." However, once Peter Jackson and his lawyers brought up the possibility of a financial audit and possible subpoena, the studio quickly changed its tune, opting to settle the matter with Peter Jackson before it could go to open court. Now while this was a massive win for Peter Jackson, the Lord of the Rings franchise will most likely go down in history as one of the most litigated films ever made, due to the number of people who filed lawsuits after getting screwed over by their respective profit sharing agreements. Most of these lawsuits, as far as I can tell, resulted in private settlements, which, when you think about it, kinda highlights the lengths these studios would go to in order to keep their shady dealings under wraps. If you go ahead and check the Hollywood Accounting Wikipedia page, you'll find many more instances where studios have taken advantage of other creatives on purpose. And if you look closely, you'll even notice a certain pattern emerging. Creators often sue the studios, and the studios often settle quietly. It's a constant cycle of CEOs trying to squeeze every penny out of a project, while the rest are fighting to receive their fair share. Honestly, it all feels very exhausting. At least to me anyway. This practice is so common in Hollywood, and yet all this time, nothing has changed. Now, I don't mean to say that people are just accepting this unfair treatment. With the current strikes in Hollywood underway, there's a real chance for a meaningful change to take place. But at the same time, let's not forget that these people are up against powerful CEOs who would probably financially destroy anyone that gets in their way. Hell, even one studio exec allegedly said that they're prepared to have people bleed out and lose their homes just to come out ahead in the strike. And if you ask me, that's just outright evil, especially when you stop to think about the amount of wealth they have in their bank accounts. With all that said, thank you for stopping by. My partner and I are still new to this whole YouTube thing, but we hope to get better with each upload. So if you liked the video, maybe give us a like and subscribe. With your help, we might just pass 125 subscribers. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.